Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 6, Episode 39 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos. It's a very long acronym, and the important parts are that it's basically Q&A, and the P stands for podcasts, which you can access this in podcast format by clicking on links in the description if you're currently on the YouTube video, and that is, in part because of the support of our patrons on Patreon,
Also
which is also what the P is, little bit.
Questions, comments, answers, and talking.
Yeah, and right at the top here, I am going to say that I am sick with a cold. The show must go on, but if I get more nasally as this progresses, know that that's the reason why. And, apologies in advance if that bothers anybody.
Yeah.
But it's this or nothing, so
Yes.
take it if you want it, I guess. Getting right into the questions, the first one comes from Ivilo Koev, and they say, as a guy said in a previous video of yours, you're really detailed with explanations and trying a lot of different options. I don't see why you guys couldn't just branch off to a new game unless you don't want to invest that amount of time. Also, why do you not play Injustice 2? Is there a reason behind it? On the book review topic, why not just do whatever game content you'll be doing if you're going to do anything, and just post book review videos whenever you have some ready? I find your way of thinking to be interesting and detailed, yet not forceful to make others follow it, hence why you keep me hooked even if I have more or less taken a break of Injustice. Most people watching your P&Q&C&A&T videos probably watch it for you, not for the Injustice-related content. As for games you could play for content, you could always make a poll in one of your next videos where viewers can vote which game they'd like to see you playing.
Maybe answer the last part first. I think, and then we'll get into the detail about it. But I think if we actually had a poll asking people what they want us to play, and then we didn't play it, it would seem like a bit of a jerk move.
Yeah, my main issue with that is that, I don't want to play a game specifically for the purposes of making YouTube content for it.
Ah, exactly. Well put.
So that would be great if that sort of aligned with our plans. And I think maybe that there might come a point where if I really just want to make something, I'm like, hey, what do you think we should play? Might make sense as a question, but just where we're at right now, it doesn't. Especially because I don't have a lot of time for games right now. I haven't actually been playing really anything right now.
Okay, so what's interesting about this is, all right, so before we talked about how we were related, when we had the channel from the very beginning, we never really talked about how we ended up here at this point. And it probably bears repeating that it was sort of the perfect synchronicity between your interests and my interests, and that's, if we hadn't both been playing, I don't think this channel would exist.
Oh, absolutely not, yeah.
And very rarely, I mean, is there any other game that we both play? That's
a while
true.
Ago,
that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that was before your voice was even had the hint of changing. But yeah, okay, so that's fair. But so you started playing this, and we were on vacation. We had no internet because I was too cheap to buy internet.
Yeah, we've actually mentioned this not too long ago. Yeah, and so we both played on the same account for a while.
Right, but then I was hooked on the game, and I started. I mean, I remember when I was playing it, I was farming Bonus Battle 1.
Yeah.
You had just gotten a 1 gold daily pack, discount daily pack, when they used to have 75,000 instead of 100,000 once a day. You could buy it for a 25% discount.
Yeah.
And you had Black Adam, Regime Black Adam.
That's true. Yeah.
And I still remember, that was just so much fun, and it was because we were both, there's not a lot of intersection between the games that you play and what I play.
Yeah, so, I normally would be able to rattle off a few things I play and then explain why each of them is not something I could probably make content for. But right now, I can't even really rattle off games that I've been playing because I haven't had time to do anything.
Right,
really.
School's been a bit of a crunch.
Yeah, and I think as far as book reviews and, people who are looking at stuff for our opinions, that would be interesting to do maybe when we had things to say.
So this is the kicker. I mean, I would love to do a lot of book reviews. I find myself, as much as I'm interested in books and I'm still picking up books, and I've got maybe a bookshelf with literally dozens of books that have come highly recommended from different sources that I respect, that I still haven't gotten around to reading, because the kind of mental energy that it takes to be able to immerse myself in a different world, the chunks of time that I can find don't lend itself lately to reading, even though I have time to still play every once in a while. I can still do a 15, 20, even 30-minute game if it happens. But it's one of those things where if you can't schedule it, you don't know that you're going to be able to. I don't have the book in front of me, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not getting through stuff nearly as fast as I can. And there's still stuff. I remember when we were hustling for books, and the idea was great. And then when I got the books,
you had to read them all.
And then I felt obligated. I felt like I really ought to. And it was then that I realized that life is pretty busy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's especially because really the way that we've had to approach this channel as a hobby, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do stuff because we have to for the channel.
Okay, so a good example of that, not for the channel stuff, but the idea of having to do something and not having time. You're in the middle of reading Just City by Joe Walton.
Yep.
And we're gonna both be at Joe Walton's convention next week.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that we wanted to get done. Like I wanted to read, like some of the writers that are going to be there, we want to finish reading their books to make sure that if we have the chance, we can talk to them about it, and talk to them about how much we like what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get through, or not get through, it feels, that sounds like it's more of an obligation. I'm trying to read through Ada Palmer's.
And Gresham
Like
McCulloch
Lightning.
has
Right,
has
because
a book out.
internet, I guess, and I'm on Twitter, it seems like it's everywhere. Like there's so many people referring to it, and it's gotten so many good big reviews. So those are 3 books that we're collectively trying to read before.
But we don't have time.
Yeah, and I guess we're hoping that the 6-hour drive to Montreal will be enough time to be able to
read them. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's entirely possible with what we're reading, right? That there will be actually an opportunity for book reviews, not too far in the future, and we might do a book review, a couple book reviews videos, or maybe even just like a roundup where we try a different format and just talk about all the books that we've read recently as their own thing. Who knows? So we'll be able to see that. And I guess to your other stuff,
Injustice 2?
Injustice 2, we played for a while. We didn't love it. It was just okay, and then we got banned.
Yes.
And then Warner Brothers didn't unban us, and we said,
Well,
okay,
never
this was
didn't unban us. They never even responded to your email to say, hey, this is what's happening. Like you're still banned, or we're fixing it, and it just wasn't good enough.
That was our
make
excuse to stop
setting up a
playing.
new account,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we could have just cleared the data, set up a brand new account. It didn't seem worth it. It was too. My biggest criticism was it was way too grindy. If you wanted, like Injustice, you play at your own pace.
Yeah.
The matchmaker is good. You do what you want. Not a big deal. Injustice 2, it felt like if you didn't really spend a huge amount of time or spend a lot of money, then the game would be frustrating to play. And that's always been my biggest thing, right? That a game, there should be no frustration. If it's frustrating, I don't want to be playing it.
It's true. So there we go.
So what else? Oh, and I appreciate the question, but I also appreciate the compliment. Like I take a lot of pride in trying to be clear in explaining some of our ideas. So I appreciate that Ivilo thinks that the way we explain things is interesting and detailed.
And not forceful. I also appreciate that, because I think at the end of the day, ideally, if we're doing a good job, we've couched our statements that we think we can't, make with certainty, and we've, hopefully whenever we're sharing things that are our opinions, they clearly read as just that, right? To the people watching us. So I think that's sort of good verification that at least from the feedback we've gotten,
we're
that we're
hitting
on the
our
right
marks.
track. Yeah.
And I should point out too, actually, I sort of started on and didn't really finish the idea about that if we had a poll, you already answered this sort of, but it's basically if there was a game that people voted on and wanted us to play, I still probably wouldn't play it. Like it's got to be sort of that right mix of
it's got to be a game that we want to play, really,
that we both want to play. But in terms of my taste, it has to have enough of a lot of games, they do the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason why Injustice was so compelling was partly because of the game, but partly because this was Injustice. So these are DC characters that I already have some sort of connection to.
Yeah.
So it made it worthwhile playing this instead of, say, some other collecting game or some other fighting game.
Better than WWE Immortals, for example.
Exactly.
Which is basically the same game.
Right.
Mechanically, anyways.
Yeah, and that's and we actually did play that for a while. At one point, we were doing 3 different games on this channel. For people who have been with us for a while, they already know that.
Yeah, and I mean, we did some Dying Light videos that nobody cared about. We did some Super Hot videos that nobody
those
cared
are great.
about. We did some Call of Juarez videos that nobody cared about.
Those were fun.
Yeah.
And what else was there?
Dark Souls.
You did a Dark Souls.
One Dark Souls video that nobody cared about.
Yeah, and there was
which is fine. I mean, I think to some extent that belies the fact that those games weren't things that we had anything particularly interesting to say, right?
So this is it too, right? So when we the tip of the iceberg is the video.
Yeah.
And all the work before we get to making a video is all the stuff that nobody sees, but still time that you have to put in. If if you're not making just Let's Play video, which we're not, because I
Yeah.
don't think we're compelling enough. We don't have enough personality to do that.
Yeah, and you're not making analysis videos, because if you look at the game analysis people on YouTube, right? I'm thinking of people like Mark Brown with Game Maker's Toolkit, Noah Caldwell-Gervais, Errant Signal, tons of other people.
Okay.
Those are just a couple.
They just, totally.
Super interesting folks, have a lot of really cool stuff to say. I think that, like, if we were doing stuff for other games, they are probably...
It's been done.
Yeah, they're probably, like, the closest equivalent to what we'd want to do, right? I mean, they're not directly, like, on-the-ground advice as much as they are more abstract, like, sort of design-based.
Right.
But people are already doing it, and they're already doing it better than we are.
I mean, that's it, right? So the reason why we even have any kind of audience, and it's not even that big, but the reason we have any kind of audience is it's a relatively small niche. The ecosystem is not that crowded.
Yeah.
We got there early, and we've played long enough, and we've played mindfully enough. I think that we have some expertise that's worth sharing, like some ideas at least about the game that are worth sharing that other people aren't doing already.
Mm-hmm.
We're sort of medium-sized fish in a relatively small pond.
Yeah. So I think that's the problem is, when we did our other video series, like, I enjoyed them for as long as we did them. Mm-hmm. I think doing them much longer would not have been interesting. And when I said nobody cared about them, I wasn't saying that because I was bitter about it. I think we didn't give anybody a compelling reason to particularly care about them.
I mean, it's just an objective analysis, I think. It's a fair and accurate analysis.
Yeah, and, that's sort of nobody's fault, or ours, if anything. But it just speaks to the fact that, branching out to that other stuff would probably be more challenging. It would definitely be more challenging for us. I think to the people who are saying it, do this other stuff, and we'll follow you to it, I'm sure they're being genuine about it, and I'm sure they would. And I'm sure that's the small sort of
and that would be
subset of people
their
that
intent too.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point we would probably drive them away.
That it's possible.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that was sort of the subset of people that at the time was watching our other stuff when we made it.
Right.
But it just there isn't as deep a well there, I think.
Right.
For anybody really.
Listen, it's not a bad thing. Like, I think it's still surprising to me that we still even have the audience that we do.
Yeah.
But it's not. I think we've always had a realistic idea of what we've been doing here and what we've achieved.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I still totally grateful for people who are with us. Don't even need them to necessarily follow us anywhere.
Yeah.
Because we recognize that what we offer is probably not that unique outside of Injustice.
And the good news is that if we're not making content, it's going to be rattling around somewhere in the back of our heads that when something comes up that we could make content for, this is an opportunity, it'll pop up to us. So we'll be thinking about it,
I mean, that's the idea of the title behind this episode of Not Dead Yet, right? Like, so we're thinking about the end, doesn't mean we're gone yet. And even if we decided to stop, I think that's the exact right point, right? Like that it'll just take us longer, stuff will bounce around our heads, and we'll have this platform to do it. Whether people will stick around long enough to see it, we'll still every once in a while do stuff. It's just that I think the regularity is probably not going to be there.
Mm-hmm. So there we go. Our next question comes from Crimson97 or 097.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, I imagine it's been asked before, but have you played any of NetherRealm's games for console/PC? And do you guys play any other fighting games or other games at all? And the answer to that is yes and yes, although to the first half, not a lot. We have Injustice for Steam, which is not the ideal platform to play it on, and we tried to play it with keyboard controls, which is not a good control set to play it with, so we didn't get a lot of mileage out of that one.
Right. But we did get it and actually give it away a few times to support the game.
Over the course of it, I've purchased like at least 4 copies of Injustice.
Right.
Console for Steam. Yeah. And other games,
This is probably not the answer they're expecting. I play Street Fighter 2 and badly. Not badly. Maybe mediocrely.
You also play Soul Calibur, okay?
Oh, all right. So the original Soul Calibur. All right. So this is the history. So recently we were at this Canadian National Exhibition in Toronto.
Yeah, the C&A.
And they had a whole section. I don't remember what the display or the hall was. They had a bunch of old...
It's like the gaming garage or something.
Yeah, the stand-up consoles to play, and there was the
arcade cabinets.
like the full size
Yeah.
stand up, and they actually had a Street Fighter 2, and you could play it without any cost. And there's one guy who was there, and I played him a few times, and I lost every single time. It reminds me of why I don't really play that many fighting games.
Yeah.
So when did we mention this? Chun-Li was the one that I started playing with.
Oh
because
yeah,
it was
like
basically button
pretty
mashing.
recently actually.
And I can't remember where we were talking about this, but maybe last week even.
Yeah.
But I started to learn how to play Ken and Ryu. My problem is, well, I got two problems. One problem is I'm always used to playing second player.
Yeah.
So I can do the fireball and the hurricane punch from the second player side, from the right side, reasonably consistently. I can barely do it from the other side. So if I get trapped on the other side, I'm toast. And so I still remember that my one glory game was I was playing a guy in the arcade, and there used to be like a gentleman's kind of agreement that whoever wins the first one would let the other person win the second one, and then it would just be the one fight, the third fight for everything.
Yeah.
And I won the first fight. He won the second fight pretty easily, but I was saving my best for last, so I was playing second player position, and I just did the small hurricane punch over and over with almost no latency in between.
Yeah.
So he kept trying to do anything in between. Like as soon as he stopped blocking, because I was doing a hurricane punch over, I had him cornered. I just kept on doing him over and over again, and I will never be physically as good as that ever again. And that was my one moment. I could not reproduce it ever again. But that's what I play. Like I just don't have a lot of experience playing games in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and I've sort of played a ton of stuff. Probably too much stuff to list here. So one of the games that you've played, we've mentioned this before on the channel. It's no secret that we sort of love the game Her Story.
Oh,
we both
that was so
and
great. There's supposed to be a sequel to it.
Yeah, there's a sequel coming out in not too long. It's spiritual successor. It's not like a actual narrative sequel, because that would be impossible if you played Her Story. No spoilers. But it's a complete narrative.
Okay, but what's great about that is that you don't have to go through it one way.
Yeah.
Like you can get to they clearly have an idea of where you're going to end up.
Yeah. But it's a full narrative game that happens entirely non-linearly, and it's a ton of fun, and I highly recommend it to literally anybody. It's one of those games that it's literally like if you're okay with crime and murder and a little bit of sort of weirdness
it's a mystery.
in your subject matter. For everybody else, you're like... Everybody who's okay with that, I would recommend Her Story too. It's just a stellar game, but I played tons of stuff. I mean, you played both the Portal games too with me.
Oh, Portal was a lot of fun. And I actually think I did that independently, right? Like I did. I don't.
Yeah,
know
you didn't.
Yeah,
you didn't need my help for that one. Just if we're listing off games, I don't even really have a list, but I've played, like, Saints Row, a couple Saints Row games. I've played Overwatch, Minecraft, Terraria.
All right, so
tons of old AAA games.
It occurs to me too that in terms of if we're talking about sort of the meta part, where we're thinking about what works in a YouTube channel. That you not only do you have to have something original to say.
Yeah.
I think you also need to be early on in the cycle of the game. So if you're going to be playing stuff and not adding a lot of in-depth kind of analysis that takes
it's better to be
hours.
quick. Yeah, because that's when people are talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we love Portal. I think I'd be willing to play it again even.
Yeah.
But
we don't have anything interesting to say about Portal. Also, it's a puzzle game, so having played it once sort of takes a little bit of the oomph out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do Angry Birds. I played Angry Birds for a while, but I gave up on that after.
Yeah, the things that I have been having time to play right now are pretty much Downwell, mobile Tetris. Downwell is a pretty stellar game. I think we've talked about it before.
I'm playing Wordscapes.
Okay.
That does not lend itself to an audience. Oh, and WPT Poker, I have actually not been playing it, but I've got an account. So every few weeks, they say, oh, we've added something like 25,000 credits to your account because I think they're trying to entice me to play. Like right now, I've got like 1.5 million credits because I played for a while. It's poker. It's Texas Hold'em poker. Yeah. So for a while there, I was just playing because if I had 2 minutes, I could buy into a hand, play a few hands, and then back out. And I got okay at it. I mean, I having put no money into it, not bought anything.
Is online poker the same? Like, it feels like it would play pretty differently just because you can't actually look at anybody. You can't see.
Like for tells, like those kind of advantages. Yeah, for sure. That there's no, but I guess you're taking one whole element out of it, because not only can you not see other people, they can't see you.
Yeah, it seems like that element though is, valuable in poker.
Well, you could say that same thing about, let's say you're playing Street Fighter. When you can watch what they're doing, how they're setting up on the buttons and stuff.
That's true.
And so when you can't see that, you lose a little bit of information. You can't anticipate.
You lose a little bit, but it feels like that's more important in poker because most of it is trying to figure out what other people have, right?
I think you can get a lot of clues though from how they play and how they bet.
I guess so.
And then
I feel like it's easier to bluff.
Um,
without any visuals.
You would think so, except a lot of the times the bluffing has to do with one, how they bet up until that point, two, how you evaluate your own hand and what's showing on the board, right? So you have to. There's usually a range, like when they talk about a range of what you're representing or what you can guess at the other person's hand, then a lot of times if they're bluffing, but like 95% certainty you have the better hand, you can take them for a ride. Totally.
That's true.
So it's not just like, because you can look at your hand and look at what's on the board. You have an idea. I mean, you see basically.
Yeah, there's a few
cards of what they.
If you see what you have and what they have, I mean, if you were theoretically like a computer, you could just compute the exact percentage chance that they have something better than you.
Yeah.
And then you just use how they bet to augment that, basically, right?
Right.
And you take that a step back, you still have a sort of sense of whether it's likely or unlikely that they have something better than you.
And sometimes the interesting thing is to make a bet early on before you actually have the hand, gambling at what you think you're going to make.
That's true.
And so even if their hand is at that point reasonably good, you know that the best it could be is probably, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Seeing how early people bet in versus when cards get flipped. Poker's a really interesting game that I can imagine a lot of complexity in, and it's a game that I can't really play because I always know that I'm sort of missing out on playing optimally, and it frustrates me.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Playing Prez, right? Or playing Crazy Eights, or playing the variant of Crazy Eights, Mao.
Right.
Mao's a lot of fun. I can play all those because I feel like I'm playing relatively competently. But whenever I play poker, I always just feel like I'm out of my depth, and the understanding required to even have a sort of general sense of the odds feels like it's too much work to make it worth playing poker.
All right. So one game I love that I haven't had a chance to really play properly with any kind of regularity for probably like 30 years.
Yeah.
Is bridge. And what's interesting, if you play a version called Duplicate, there's a group of people, they cycle around the tables, you play the exact same hands that other people play.
Oh.
And then you get to compare how you do against them, other people. So it's not just making a good contract, it's making the most of the hand that you've got, whether you're basically playing or defending.
Yeah.
And so you aren't really at a disadvantage except for your ability to bid with your partner and play the hand out.
That's interesting.
Yeah. No, it's great. Bridge story. The only time I've ever gotten kicked out of McDonald's was when I was playing bridge at McDonald's and they did not approve and they actually kicked us out. I don't know where... that was the point. There's no other point.
You got kicked out of a fast food establishment?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I don't believe I've ever been kicked out of a fast food establishment, so
I am a bad influence, apparently.
I mean, obviously not, because I've never been kicked out of a fast food establishment. If you were,
no, I mean, and the two of you know how sometimes when you know somebody and they say they're a bad influence, like, why is it that somebody has to be the bad influence and somebody? Like, why can't the other person be a good influence? Is it always that like the rot always spreads? I guess in fruit it does, and in vegetables it does because it releases that kind of gas.
Well, I think I think just somebody saying that they're a bad influence just means in that context they've been a bad influence on you. I mean, I guess it does go both ways. People are less willing to say I'm a good influence, I think, because it sounds very conceited.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think you hear it because people are much more willing to put themselves down than compliment themselves, and also probably more willing to be a little self-deprecating than they are to give somebody else a specific compliment by saying you're a good influence.
No, but all right, so let's say when you're talking with somebody's parents, though, you're saying that kid is a bad influence.
Yeah.
You never say that kid is a good influence.
Yes, you do. Some people say, oh, they're a good influence on you. Yeah.
Huh.
I've heard that before, for sure.
I don't get out enough.
I don't know.
I think we've exhausted that question.
This
was the NetherRealm games.
This is just other games we've played.
So we have played Mortal Kombat X. We played that. Those
For
are the
mobile.
three games.
These are mobile.
Yeah, mobile. We played Mortal Kombat X, WWE Immortals, and we played Injustice 2 as our channel, like
But
main
the
stakes.
question here is if we played any for console or PC. So the answer to that is yes, just Injustice and just briefly. And at somebody else's house, I played some Mortal Kombat, but like I sucked at it, and they were very good, so it wasn't very long lived or very entertaining. But through no fault of the game.
Okay, so that's the Soul Calibur. You mentioned, all right, you mentioned that I used to play Soul Calibur and I was decent at it. So yeah, I was decent at it. But what's funny, so I have a friend who doesn't play a lot of console games. He had a console for, I believe it was what was before the Sega Dreamcast?
Sega Saturn? Genesis?
Sega Saturn. Saturn sounds about right. So there was some fighting game in it, and he had this console. He was playing it a bit, and all I had was my instincts from playing Street Fighter 2 and the original Mortal Kombat. Mm-hmm. And so when we got together the first time to play it, I just kept on beating him.
Yeah.
And so then he got frustrated and stopped playing. But then he got a Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah.
And he got Soul Calibur, and he got so good with everybody that when I started playing him, I'd be able to get like a few, maybe first 10 games, I'd win like 6 of them.
Yeah.
And then I lost consistently after that because he just developed so much of the skills that was necessary and like the plays and the moves, so that whenever I tried to, it's always a bit of a cat and mouse game. You have little patterns that you do in habits, and you get into them, and when the other person recognizes them, they can exploit them, or you need to switch again.
Oh yeah, it's like how I used to be really good at Smash in my friend group, Super Smash Brothers. And I would be able to beat them pretty consistently up until Ultimate came out. Because when we were playing for the Wii U, literally one of my friends has a Wii U, nobody else does, so we would just play when we were over at his house.
Right.
And he wouldn't really play by himself much at all, so we were all sort of had the same amount of time. And I just had a little bit of an edge. I don't know exactly why, but I would just always have a little bit of an edge, and I would win pretty consistently. And I was just enough better that I would win like 8 games out of 10 probably, out of a group of like 3 or 4 players.
Right.
So I was sort of cleaning up.
Right.
And now everybody has Switches. Right. Everybody has a new Smash, and I'm getting curb stomped pretty consistently. It is pretty much flipped the other way around, where my friends will trade off winning amongst each other,
right?
And I pretty much only get in there when we're playing in a big group setting where they're handling each other a lot, and then at the end I sort of clean up the scraps. I'm not doing nearly as well, so that's a sort of similar trajectory.
That's what they say in Survivors, flying under the radar.
Yeah, because everybody else had online. We didn't get Switch Online. I couldn't justify paying a monthly fee for Switch Online, and so they now have a compelling reason to play in their free time by themselves, right, or online together when they're physically separated. And I don't, and so I just suck now compared to them. Right. I used to be not good, but better, and now I think they are actually good, and I am no worse than I was before, but comparatively pretty crap.
It's true. Any kind of those competitive games like that. Do you remember when I used to play Boggle, competitively?
Yeah.
I used to be pretty good. Now I don't think, my
your
comfort,
skills aren't honed.
Yeah, my facility with the dictionary is not nearly as good as it used to be able to play properly. But I used to be good. At one point, I was one of those Facebook forums of Boggle. I used to be ranked number 1.
Wow.
Yeah. That's something to brag about. That's like not even a humble brag. That was pretty spectacular. It was pretty fun.
There we go. Okay, our next question comes from, or I guess this is more of a comment. This is the C. Comes from Yazan Kayali. And they say, man, it's been a while since I watched your vids. It's nice to come back to you. I don't know if you recognize me, but I subbed to you when you had 4K. Now you will hit 20K soon because your vids are amazing.
Thank you for the compliment. I sort of recognize you because Yazan is not a common name.
Yeah,
so...
and I recognize the icon, the profile.
Oh, okay.
So I do actually remember vaguely.
Yeah, but the interesting part is the comment about we used to have 4,000, we're up to 20,000, or so we're up to 19 something, so we should be hitting 20,000.
We're getting like no subscribers now.
We may not, and I don't know whether it's probably tied into the fact that the Injustice audience isn't growing, but also that we're not creating. It's like the comic book industry. They're not creating content that's attracting new readers.
Yeah, we're not exactly our cost value analysis for people subscribing. We're not giving people a lot of reason to be a new subscriber.
Right. I mean, if you found us, you found us and you like our stuff, and the people who haven't found us, I mean, maybe it's just there's not enough new people playing Injustice. Maybe the stuff that we're supplying isn't of value. But I think a lot of our library, sort of our archive of gameplay videos, still has value for somebody wanting to learn how to advance.
Yeah, because I think even if people are playing Injustice and you find our stuff, it's different enough now that if you just want to watch Injustice content, we might not even be the channel to subscribe to anymore.
That's true.
Right? For the amount that we talk about other stuff, right? You even look at just this video and the breakdown.
Now,
if you're coming to it from a pure Injustice standpoint, why would you subscribe after a video like this? Unless you happen to like us for our personalities.
Now, what's interesting, too, though, on now the flip side of that argument is we're still doing some multiplayer videos every once in a while. I think I mentioned this last time, but we've still got 3 ideas for gameplay videos that I think are compelling enough to withstand like a 10-minute video, which is what we're aiming for now.
Yeah.
Instead of the longer ones when we could ramble on for a lot longer, because it was all new stuff, like new characters, new gears, and I think we've tread that ground enough that we don't have to explain something as fundamentally basic as Tantu Totem is good and specials are good. A lot of people who play know that already, or I mean, even if you don't, like I said, there's a ton of Injustice content out there.
Yeah.
Not necessarily current, but even some of ours. I mean, we've got a lot of gameplay videos, right? From the last 5 years, 6 years, almost 6. So I don't think, and concretely, I think we may not actually reach 20,000 because what we've seen in the last few months is a flattening of an accumulation of subscribers.
Yeah.
So we're not actually making, I think last month we gained 1 subscriber.
Wow.
So it might take us a lot longer to reach 20,000 than it took us to reach the first 1,000.
Yeah, it's true. So there we go, which is interesting. That's not normally the trajectory for channels that you see, but I guess the channels that you see normally aren't the ones slowly dying.
And I just realized, too, the way I said it sounded dumber than I intended. The last 100 it will take us to get to 1,000 will take us longer than they get to the first 1,000 we ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is separate because we're getting to the end of our questions. This is just a fun anecdote, which is that, as I mentioned earlier, I have a cold. As I probably have never mentioned on this channel before, I do a thing which is partially smart and partially just a sort of crappy hot fix, which is when you blow your nose a lot and it gets really red and sore, you generally want a barrier, and instead of using Vaseline or there's specific stuff for it, I forget what it was called. A friend gave me some sort of barrier cream.
Oh, but this is our family thing.
Yeah. Our friend gave me some sort of barrier cream, which is actually more for it, but we just use chapstick.
Hot tip. Yeah, this is the hot tip. If you want anything out of this video, if you're going to take anything from this is the most important thing, or this podcast. Nose chapstick. Keep a stick. Yeah. Label it for your nose, because it's going to be your nose that's sick and diseased. Mm-hmm. And every time you blow your nose, rub your chapstick on it.
Yeah. So the current chapstick that I'm rocking is the free chapstick from my dentist.
It's a good one, though.
Who offers branded chapstick. It's pretty good. But the other thing about it is that it's like peppermint. So
it could sting a little bit.
Well, the thing about it is that if you wait until your nose gets raw before you start applying the chapstick, you're punished for your hubris, and it does sting. But if you start applying it before it starts, before it's really rubbed raw, it just makes your nose tingle.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just feel alive.
Yeah, no, so just a quick shout out to my dentist, because my nose has been tingling this entire video up until this point, because I've required the application of nose chapstick. So that's a fun pro tip for you. And if you're using peppermint, it's sort of like a self challenge. I guess it's
listen, it's probably better than the jalapeno peppers.
It's definitely better than jalapeno peppers. It's better than no chapstick.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because in one way it encourages you to start using it before there's any damage to your skin, which is good.
Right.
But in the other way, it's the way that it encourages you is by punishing you with pain if you're not on top of it.
So
properly.
what's funny about this is that in the last couple years, I know somebody who's a healthcare provider.
Yeah.
Who usually gives advice to people, and she did not know this nose chapstick thing, and thought it was
you
like
can use other stuff.
No, but the idea, it's convenient, it works, it's not messy, and So she started...
Lanolin, I think, was the thing that my friend gave me.
Okay, but lanolin, it can come in different forms, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think chapstick sometimes have lanolin, too.
Maybe, I don't know.
But that a healthcare provider who's normally the kind of person that would be giving this type of advice did not know this and found it a revelation and started advising all of her patients to do this.
People will also give you weird looks if you do it in public.
Sure.
So I don't know if that's a pro or a con, but there you go. That's some other information to keep in mind, is that it needs to be your secret shame.
Nice.
Don't use colored chapsticks also. Don't use like lip gloss.
Yeah, that's true. If it's too shiny, it doesn't look good.
You look a little sickly. Especially don't use novelty soda flavored Mountain Dew chapstick, because that stuff is slightly green and it's not a good look. I won't tell you how I've learned that.
Point taken. So I think that's it for the questions. What I wanted to talk about, you know how every once in a while we've gotten into, let's talk about what's happening lately.
Yeah. We're going to talk about politics to address that. I forget what the exact phrasing was, but the guy who a while ago said that we were good until we just became like a left-wing talking point repeating channel.
Yeah.
And I want to repeat some left-wing talking points.
Oh, I see. I guess I shouldn't say no, but I was actually wanting to talk about the fact that the Canadian federal election is coming up. Next year is the U.S. federal election.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that we've become so tribal about our party affiliations.
Yeah.
And I think it would be kind of cool, and we see this now with the Liberals, that it's become an issue where they booted a couple of their MPs, their elected MPs from the Liberal Party.
No, they didn't boot them. They left.
I think they booted them. They said that they couldn't run as Liberals anymore before
Philpott?
they actually decided to Philpott.
No, Philpott left. That was a choice she made.
I don't think so.
I'm fairly confident.
She chose to stand up to it, and they got. We'll have to look this up after. But either way, I think the idea of independence is actually a good one, because the biggest argument I've seen, and the person running against Philpott is making the argument that if you are a member of a party, you get to talk to your party members and convince them that something is good, and then you can all stick together and come out and say that we're going to do this thing that's really important to this particular member.
Yeah.
And I think what she was missing, is that it also means that if they don't agree with you and it's not a priority for the party or for the leader of the party, that what you want will actually not get done. You don't get to bring it to the larger group of everybody who's actually a federal politician.
Yeah.
And I think having a slate, which is basically what having parties is, having that slate means that you get a bit of leverage, you get a bit of recognition, so that people who are feeling kindly towards your leader is more likely to vote for you. So you get a lot of recognition as a result of the party affiliation and the leader affiliation. But once you're in, it's you know what? It's like somebody who's traditionally published versus self-published. Once you're traditionally published, you may not want to be self-published because of all the extra work involved.
Yeah.
But it means that you've got a built-in audience that you can reach that you didn't have until you'd actually gone through that other route. So if you are independent,
I don't understand that.
Okay, so the idea, I guess, is that once you've been elected, you've got the name brand recognition, that you still have a chance even if you're no longer party affiliated.
Oh, okay.
But if you're party affiliated and you don't have the name brand recognition, you can play off that, whether you're liberal or conservative, whatever, or people like Justin Trudeau or Andrew Scheer. Mm-hmm. Don't know why they like him, but then you have a better chance because there's value there.
Yeah.
So, I just showed you the video of Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah.
Right before this. Yeah,
right before you showed me a video, which was great. I think it was a stellar response and not something that I would have expected. I tend to not expect people to be that blunt when they're saying good things.
Right.
The only time I've seen politicians be that blunt is when they're usually saying pretty crappy stuff.
Right. And when they're trying to make a point and score points and make a posture more so than actually, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is in the phrase, but you know what I mean?
To explain the video,
okay, so
before we talk about it, somebody asked him, a reporter asked him, in sort of response to his discussion about providing better drinking water for an Indigenous community, but also sort of plans to expand that wider to all Indigenous communities.
to make sure they have access to clean water, because there's been grassy narrows is a particular kind of stain on the history of Canada where there's a huge amount of, I believe it's mercury in their water supply, so they haven't been able to drink the water properly. And even outside of mercury, there's some kind of contamination, so you need to boil the water. Maybe I'm getting another community mixed up with it. Yeah. The idea is basically they don't have water, and it's going to be expensive to clean up, but he's saying that if he becomes leader, he's going to make it a priority to make sure their water's clean.
Yeah, and a reporter asked him, so are you just, doing is this just a blank check for any indigenous communities to solve all of their, I don't remember the specific wording they used, but it was some sort of like ecological problem, something like that.
Yeah, whatever problem issues.
And he just turned around and said, would you be asking that if this was like Toronto or
was having problems with their water, or Montreal? And he says, no, but what I'm saying is you understand it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
He said, okay, so if it was Vancouver, I still ask you the same question. If it was Vancouver, would you be asking the same question? And I think it really brings home the fact that for any reasonable person hearing his response, his question and response, the answer is obviously no.
Yeah, you just handle it. And I think it speaks to the fact that people are very reticent to spend more money than they're already spending.
For other people.
But even more so for other people, they're reticent to spend more money than they're already spending, and they don't take a step back and realize that the fact that you don't want to spend more money doesn't mean that this isn't something that you should have already been spending money on for a long time leading up to this point. Doesn't mean that this shouldn't have been something built in, right? People sort of feel like, especially when their situations are comfortable, that the engine of democracy and the engine of government is running fine as is. Right? Because they don't have any problems, right? So, we don't need to increase spending if you're doing fine, and if everything goes exactly the same way it's going, you're going to come out pretty well, right?
But I think there's, at least in this case, a certain amount of othering. So where they think of them as other people. Like, so when they see a large metropolis running into trouble, like an infrastructural problem that needs to be fixed, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. They presume that it's going to get fixed.
Yeah, and I think that othering happens whether it's consciously or not, for sure.
Right. So whether you want to call it racism or listen, seriously, like the First Nations people got a really bum rap. They got removed from where they were living. They had their children taken away. It was really a genocide.
They've basically been screwed since white folks showed up pretty consistently, and still are to differing extents, including with the current government.
Yeah, and I think the bare minimum that's reasonable is they need to have access to clean water. I don't know how that anybody can argue that and somehow think that, well, it's expensive. Does that mean you're going to spend a lot of money? Like, somehow this is a slippery slope? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But that was a great, like, he was cool. So to me, that's sort of the other argument of why it's good to have a slate, because to me...
And you hear the question, and I think the question isn't even... it doesn't sound at first glance, I think, entirely unfair, right? Like, when the guy says, hey, are you going to write a blank check? You sort of want to know what the answer is, right? You hear that, and you're like, oh, yeah, are you? What is that? But then the way that he answers the question shifts the focus and answers the question at the same time. His answer is yes.
And it's enlightening.
But yes, because... obviously yes. Like,
and it's
how would you consider anything else?
It's potentially, if you didn't already get what the right answer was, it's a potentially enlightening answer.
Yeah, because are you going to write a blank check is such a loaded question. To anybody who's against government spending in general, did I say spending? Spending. To anybody who's against government spending, the answer is, saying, yeah, I'm going to write a blank check for them to fix the issues that should have been fixed, maybe makes you sound like you're doing something that they wouldn't want. But when you frame it that way, I think it's really hard for a caring individual to not hear that and go, yeah, you know what? That's pretty fair.
Yeah, so I guess that's the counter argument when I said that, being independent's not that bad. But I'll tell you what, if I was NDP, I would be so happy with Jagmeet Singh and how he's performing, campaigning for this election. Yeah,
really a great sort of example of what I'd like politicians to be.
Right.
As from everything I've seen. Obviously, we don't know everything, right? That's not a sort of blanket endorsement of everything he will do.
Well, but right now he's looking a lot better than any other leaders.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
From everything we've seen. Great stand-up looking guy.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. To finish up here at the end, we'd like to give a huge thank you to everybody who's supported us on Patreon as we wrap up the video. So thanks to Console Peasant, who's supporting us at the highest last word tier. Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Mall, and Michael DeVries, who support us on the credited level, and Eddie G and Chris Wolf at the gratitude tier. Thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching or listening. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.